with each other. We have more in common with the people we're bombing than the people we're bombing them for. People that say the system works, work for the system. We can change the world. The revolution can begin as soon as you decide it does. In yourself, Amy.
So there you have it. Russell Brand, his new book is called Revolution.
And Noam Chomsky is a cannibal.
That does it for our show, and I want to thank all the folks who've made this broadcast possible. Special thanks to Mike Burke and Renee Feltz and Nermeen Sheikh and Aaron Mate and Steve Martinez, Sam Alkoff, Hani Massoud, Ravi Karen, Dina Guzder, Amy Littlefield, Julie Crosby, Becca Staley, Dennis Moynihan.
No, he was
terrible. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for
Dennis, you should be ashamed.
It's half a minute after 1. You're listening to WMPG and W281AC, Gorham and Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from the University of Southern Maine. We are on the air thanks to donations from our listeners and through grant support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The CPB promotes the growth and development of public media in communities throughout America, online at cpb.org. There's a winter storm watch in effect for Saturday evening through Sunday afternoon. Leading up to that, the forecast for today is for mostly sunny skies with a high in the mid-30s. Tonight, mostly clear, a low of 9. Tomorrow, partly sunny to start, highs in the upper 20s. Then snow likely by evening, snow, sleet, and freezing rain after midnight. Moderate accumulation of snow, lows in the mid-20s. Sunday, rain and freezing rain in the morning, and then rain with a chance of drizzle in the afternoon, a high of 40 degrees.
I know that song. That's the theme song for WMPG's award-winning show, The Night Train, with Bill Idett.
When can I jump on board the night train?
Every Saturday afternoon, from 1:30 to 3, the Night Train takes you on a journey through the history of rock and roll.
What kinds of songs does Bill play?
Here is a medley of some typical Night Train poppers and rockers.
It's the Night Train Show, only on WMPG, Southern Maine Community Radio from USN, Saturday afternoons at 1:30. Be there.
All aboard!
And now it's time for Nonprofit Insider.
Driving, music's blaring in my ears, engines roaring, the horizon's drawing near, pedal to the floor, no more feet in the door, gonna drive right out of this bitter night. I'm a constant seeker in Converse sneakers, always chasing sunset.
Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with the executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I've worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years, and in those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. Well, I hope everybody had a great holiday season and a happy new year to everybody. And I know we've had some recorded shows for the last couple of weeks, but we are live today. And I do have to admit, we have a kind of a unique show today, something we've never done on Nonprofit Insider before. And I thought it'd be worth talking a little bit about it and getting some insight into the nonprofit world from people who are working outside of the nonprofit world, but directly within the nonprofit world. So we have our official Ask the Consultant show today. And to help us out with that, we have Bill Bayreuther and Ronnie Weston. Welcome.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. Great to be here.
Happy to be here. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you. So Bill is principal of William A. Bayreuther Grant Writing, an independent consulting practice that assists clients with operating, project capacity building, and capital fundraising strategies. Bill is a frequent skill builder training for the Maine Association of Nonprofits. Ronnie founded Bull Moose Group, a collaborative group of independent consultants to counsel nonprofits in fulfilling their missions and realizing their visions. Specializing in grassroots fundraising and board recruitment and development, Ronnie places special emphasis on the role of the nonprofit in enriching the community. And for those of you who don't know, I'm principal of Unger & Associates, LLC, a nonprofit consulting group who does a lot of the same, but our specialty right now is data management and donor management systems. So I think we have a great group here and excited to get into it. Because this is a really good opportunity for board members, nonprofit staff, or volunteers, or anybody else in the community to pick our brains and to take our almost 100 or so years of combined wisdom. Everybody's hiding under the table now. Please feel free to call 780-4895 with your phone calls, 780-4895. So, where do we even begin? This one's going to be tough. What kind of patterns or themes do you see in the nonprofit community in the last couple of years? Do you see those trends changing? And what's your insight into some of this?
Want me to start, Bill?
Go right ahead, Ronnie.
Thank you. David, it's a good question, and I think there's a couple of things that it would be fun to focus on. One is external factors, some of which we can't control, right? The economy. While the economy is strengthening, there's going to always be the case that says there's a competition for dollars. And so nonprofits are going to have to say, how do we step up our game to be the best of the best to get those dollars? That's external. Internal, we don't have enough time to talk about all the things that I see, but I would like to point out at least a couple of things. And the first is that I do a lot of work with boards, and I know Bill's going to be talking about board recruitment, but a board must understand its role in ensuring viable resources for an organization. And included in that, of course, is fundraising. So a board in 2015 must take on training and development if they don't know how to ask for money, don't know how to steward that money, and don't know how to be good keepers of the money that they've asked for from the general public. That's the first thing.
So if I could just kind of tie that all together. In the past, as consultants, I've always said, a board should have the 3 W's or the 3 T's, the wealth, wisdom, or work, or time, treasure, and talent. But going forward, the board really has to have the 3 G's, give, get, or get off.
Well, get off is tough, right? But I do believe that if a board member knows its responsibilities in advance, and I would say that's one key thing, a key help thing that the board members can do. If they know their responsibility is to somehow participate in that process, then hopefully they're not going to have to face getting off.
To follow up on that good point, Ronnie, a lot of nonprofits with whom I've worked and whom I've heard about from other folks do have some difficulties with having recruited people onto their boards who weren't prepared sufficiently for the task. They're perfectly good people, captains of industry in many cases, people who are highly committed to their communities, but they weren't told before they signed on that part of their job had to be fundraising, had to be the getting part of the equation. And not everybody is prepared to do that.
Or is comfortable.
Exactly.
Right.
And some folks are sufficiently uncomfortable that they just flat will not do it. And a nonprofit is in a really bad spot if an executive director or a board president or a development director says to a board member, you have to do this.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right, Bill. And one of the things that we can do as consultants is help board members understand what that role is. So yes, there has to be asking going on, and it's either an executive director or development director, but sometimes neither of them are capable, and the board does have to be part of what I call fundraising as a team sport. but not everybody has to be askers.
Yeah.
There's so much in fundraising that is not asking, and that's our job to help boards understand that.
Do you think that the issue might even be more in depth than that? And for all executive directors who are never going to talk to me again on this next one, but so what? The role of the exec, in my opinion, is really that they have to make sure that they ask the potential board member the right questions before they get onto the board. And, I've talked to so many board members when I'm doing a board training with them and saying, well, the 3 Gs. Well, no one told me that when I signed up for the board. So it even goes deeper that the board member needs to know what the expectations are before they even get onto the board.
I think you're right. And what happens is that executive directors or board chairs are nervous to put that in front of a prospective board member because they think the prospective board member is going to say, well, no, I don't want to be on your board if fundraising is part of what I do.
Right. Should the executive director shy away from that question?
No, it should be front and center in written roles and responsibilities, because if the person was going to say no because of that, then you don't want them on the board.
We can say that because we're sitting at a table and we're not actually doing the day-to-day stuff. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think that there's a role for people who are very uncomfortable asking for money. There are various roles in helping out nonprofits, whether they're board members or other volunteers. I think that certainly a prospective board member does need to know way ahead of time that it's an expectation that they will be involved in fundraising, and that it would be preferred that they help ask. Not everybody can do that.
Right. And, I understand asking can be defined in many, many different ways, from giving leads to actually doing the ask, etc. But are you still seeing, or at least I'm still seeing, especially some of the smaller nonprofits, that they're so thankful to have board members that they don't even want to put that on the table for what you just said? They don't want to scare them away.
I see the same thing, and I see Ronnie nodding as well. And in a situation like that, I think that, and you see this in particular with very small nonprofits and new ones, usually. It certainly, that certainly does come up. But there's a role for the folks as well who are not going to be out asking. And David mentioned it, identifying people who might be good sources of resources, whether it's money or in-kind services or goodwill out in the community. Board members can play a very important role, even if they're not asking, in helping to identify people out there who could be asked, and very importantly, thanking them when the time comes. I've worked with some boards on which some folks just were not going to ask, and it took me years to become comfortable with the fact that some people just aren't going to ask. That's just the way they are. We all are who we are, and so I've over the years come around to trying to make it, trying to show the positive, the benefit of folks being part of the storytelling that leads up to asking, as well as the thanking donors and contributors of various stripes after the fact, and keeping them involved.
We need to, believe it or not, we need to go to our midpoint very quickly, but just a simple yes or no question, okay? Does there have to be 100% participation financially from each board member?
In my view, David, yes. It doesn't matter the dollar amount.
Gift of value.
Yes.
Okay. Bill?
In my view, the same. Absolutely. Yes. And what I suggest is that people be encouraged to give an amount that is meaningful to them.
Whether it's $1. I was working with this one board, and we talked about this before, and they've never done an annual appeal. And I know everybody on that board is on the system. They each gave a minimum of $1, but they can now say in their appeal letter that their board gave.
You cannot raise money if you don't lead by example.
Absolutely. I need to go to our important part of the conversation right now is our trivia question. And you do not know the answers to this, or you do not know the question. And I have to admit, I had to dig really, really deep to find this question. This is a fill in the blank. Shoelace, and it has to do with Maine, okay? So it's Maine related. Shoelaces must be tied when? We're going to leave you and let you think about that. This is David Unger, and I'm host of Nonprofit Insider on WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM, community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. Today we have Ask the Consultant with Bill Bayreuther and Ronnie Weston. All right, Any ideas?
Several.
Is there a prize?
Yeah, you can get a WMPG t-shirt if you get it right.
Oh, there we are. Well, I'll take the first crack at it.
Okay.
I hope that I have it. I think shoelaces are absolutely required to be tied on carnival rides.
Sorry.
Before one goes hunting?
This is an actual ordinance, and I checked it. Shoelaces must be tied when walking down the street in Portland, Maine.
Wow.
There we go. So that's another piece of useless information that we can take back and ponder about.
I hope that you will be reporting back on enforcement.
Well, that's not my job, but we'll get an outside consultant to get a report on that. How's that? So I asked this question of every show. In a post-recent election interview, Governor LePage made the statement that nonprofits don't pay their fair share and that they are takers, not givers. I can't wait to hear your responses to this.
Bill, I'm going to defer to you on this one.
Thanks, Ronnie. With all due respect to the governor, I think that it is not true that nonprofits do not pay their fair share, that they take rather than give. Nonprofits exist to give, and there's a long tradition, a long, rich, wonderful tradition of giving on the part of nonprofits and their donors. So I think that it's very unfortunate that the government was quoted as having said that. Nonprofits give in so many different ways. Some people bring up the fact that as nonprofits, these organizations are not required to pay property tax in many cases. That is, in fact, the case. Some nonprofits pay property tax on their buildings and land holdings voluntarily, if they're able to do it. And other nonprofits give so much else back to the community in lieu of taxes that they more than compensate for the fact that they're not paying into the tax structure. They're performing a lot of functions that government is not in a position to perform, especially right now with money being tight. So I think that someone in public office probably should be acknowledging the fact that nonprofits are picking up where government leaves off.
Okay.
And we can't forget that nonprofit employees pay Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes. They take their hard-earned money and buy consumable goods, so they're fueling the economy. No doubt that was a statement that should not have been made, and he has made other statements that support the nonprofit sector. So for me, it was perplexing, but I think we all at this table agree that there's a huge role for nonprofits in this state and, of course, in the country. If
you had to share an experience that's been frustrating to you as nonprofit consultant that you just wanted to take that nonprofit and shake them up and say, "What are you doing?" What would that be?
I will start there. And it's not a single experience. I think there's there's a common theme to that one. You first of all, as a consultant, you cannot want more for the nonprofit than they want for themselves. And so while we may know all the right principles of fundraising and making the ask and thanking people enough times, the nonprofit, its board, its staff needs to want to further their mission and do all the things that make that happen. So my experience has been that when a board says they want to accomplish something, but they're not willing to do the work, that they in fact don't achieve their purpose.
Right. I've had that same experience, Ronnie, not just with a single nonprofit, but I've had it as a staff member as well as a consultant. I think generally speaking, to answer this question myself, one of the things that's been most frustrating to me is that nonprofits haven't had the capacity to get themselves ready for prime time when it comes time to applying for grant funding or for contributions, that they haven't done the hard but very important work of making sure that their annual budget is in place and they're filing what they need to for government reports of various types. That's I think that consultants can play a very valuable role with a nonprofit that's not there yet in helping it grow and helping it bootstrap itself and learn to do these things. But it can be rather frustrating when you're ready to help them apply for particular funding that has an impending deadline, and you're doing some things that are background work. So I think it's really important for the nonprofits to get themselves grant ready. One way to do that, or not just grant ready, but ready to ask for contributions of various types, is to get themselves some education from outside sources. And I'll put in a plug here. It's certainly, I'm sure, not the first time it's been done on this program, for the Maine Association of Nonprofits, MANP.
Yeah, Scott was on the show.
Scott Schnapp, their executive director, and his staff do wonderful work in helping nonprofits to grow.
And I don't think enough nonprofits take the resources that are available to them into consideration. One of the lines that I really love getting is, well, we are different than any other nonprofit. And my response has always been, well, the cast of characters may be different, but the script is usually the same.
The other frustration is they say they don't have money to pay to get that kind of training.
Right.
And then they get what they don't pay for.
Right. And, to me, it goes back to the whole strategic planning process that you have to, if you have a strategic plan, how do your development goals tie into that? And I don't know about the two of you, but I can tell you countless number of times where they have this great strategic plan, but the development plan doesn't match the strategic goals.
How about if they don't have a development plan written out? Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, a development plan could be as simple as just giving you a framework. It doesn't have to be a paperweight type of development plan, but just, what are you going to, how much money do you need to raise? How are you going to do it? And what resources do you need to have? And again, we're talking a lot of small operations here, but those are the ones who are struggling.
They are. And with all that said, still, even though there are frustrations along the way, I know that all three of us and other consultants and people who do pro bono work for nonprofits derive tremendous pleasure from helping organizations move from wherever they are at point A to wherever point B is. There's
right.
Everybody has the opportunity to learn and the obligation to learn, and it's nice being part of it to help organizations grow get to a point at which they're hiring development staff.
Mm-hmm.
If they had been contracting out for it at one point, I don't have any problem at all with my clients saying, geez, Bill, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to use your services. We're hiring a development director. Yay.
That's exactly what happened to me, Bill, this last few months, and I was thrilled.
Right. I mean, even when I'm being interviewed, I tell them my goal is to wean out of the position so you get in a place where you want to be.
Yep.
A consultant's role is to help you get to that place. And we all know it's short term. What do you think the biggest mistake that a nonprofit makes today?
The biggest mistake, I don't know if I'm going to quantify it as biggest, but I'm definitely going to say that one of the mistakes that nonprofits make today is not having accurate record keeping. And by that, I mean a donor software database. And that is not just used for to track a donation, but for me, it is so helpful because it tracks good stewardship. And we talked about how board members can be fundraisers. They don't have to ask, but if they know which donors need to be thanked when, and that kind of information is recorded in that database, then that nonprofit's going to have very valuable information. So one of the mistakes that I see is that there are a lot of Excel spreadsheets flying around, and the executive director might have all of the institutional memory, but the next person coming in, if that person is getting hit by a truck, knows nothing without that kind of database.
I think Ronnie's right. Amplifying on that perhaps a little bit, I think that perhaps one of the largest mistakes that some nonprofits, not all, make is that they're not in touch with their constituency as much as they should be, as consistently as they should be. They're so busy doing the wonderful work that they do on the programmatic side.
Right.
That and they're so busy with appeals and getting out proposals of various types that they're not picking up the phone or meeting somebody for coffee as much as they might.
Right.
And nonprofits are a people-to-people business, and they are a business. Being in touch with your constituents is so terribly important. And although I do know that it's awfully hard to do it as much as you'd like.
But it always pays off at the end, and that's what a lot of nonprofits, I feel, don't realize that 2-hour lunch or coffee you have with somebody, you just don't know what's going to come out of it at the end of the day. And I had mentioned that I do a lot of data management work now, and it still amazes me. It doesn't matter what donor management system they're using, but they're never using it to the fullest potential. They still have the Excel spreadsheets, and so you're doing double entries and everything else. And it's just really, really difficult. Well, believe it or not, we're close to the end. And I didn't even get through half my questions. Would the two of you like to be on another show at another time?
Love it.
Sure.
All right. So why don't we set the time and date off air, and then we could take it from there. And, this was great. Well, thank you. Today we had Bill Bayreuther, an independent consultant. Bill, I have to find my notes here, principal of William A. Bayreuther Grant Writing. And we have Ronnie Weston, founded the Bull Moose Group, and myself, David Unger. And I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, David.
Hopefully this gave some insight to our listeners and bring up some other information. So, hear my music. Next week, we have Mike Cates, Executive Director of Camp Sunshine. Music appears by courtesy of Michael Hubbard. You can find Mike's music on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. If you happen to be in New York City next weekend, check out Mike's at Pianos. Thanks to Deb Danger, MPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street Fridays at 6:30 a.m. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please email me at npi@davidunger.net. Past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com, NP Insider tab. Now stay tuned for a Toro. Music from Mother Russia.
Something in store that will quench my furious appetite. I'm a constant seeker in Converse sneakers, always